Hey, it's Rick. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'll show you how I created this 3-color vinyl decal design. I had already created this design for the Canadian market, and I thought I should do something for the Americans as well. I couldn't figure out how to make it a one-color design though, so it had to be multicolor. I started with a quick and dirty sketch, like I always do, just to see if I thought there was something to the idea that I could work with. The next stage, for me, is to create a tighter mock-up in Photoshop. It's really easy to just bang something out quickly this way. I started first with black and white, and then colored it. I decided that rather than standard red, white, and blue, I'd create this in more vintage colors. I wanted the sticker to look old and faded. I like that vintage look. Next, I brought that Photoshop mock-up into Illustrator, where I could trace over it, creating a vector version. You need this to cut it out of vinyl. The software for that needs a clean cut path, and from Illustrator, I can export it as a DXF for this purpose. I knew going in it would be 3 separate colors, so I need those as separate elements. First, I create the total outline for the leaf itself. Then I create the orange stripes. I just create one of them and duplicate it to make sure they're all the same size. Then, using the leaf shape and the Pathfinder feature, I can quickly cut the stripes to the shape of the leaf. Now the stripes are done, I can work on the stars. I'll start by making one star and then duplicating it to create the pattern. Once I've got the star pattern done, I create a large box for the teal-colored part and create a compound path with the stars. This will knock the stars out of the blue shape, letting the beige of the leaf show through. Then I use the same trick as before and use the outside leaf shape to cut away the unnecessary parts of the teal. I thought at this point the design was a bit too simple and I could do some more details, so I decided to add these center veins to the leaves. I've had problems before cutting out tiny details on my vinyl cutter, so I've learned to clean up my designs by removing small bits I don't think will be missed. I'm also moving points around so some of the vinyl won't be so thin and prone to ripping when I weed it. These are all necessary things you need to think about when you're planning your design. I did a test decal and discovered that it was much harder than I thought to register the teal and orange parts with the beige leaf. It kept hanging out over the edges, so I've decided the solution is to create a bit of a choke around the edge. This is where you pull back the top color so when you lay down the vinyl, you've got some wiggle room to make mistakes. Here's the new design. You can see how the vinyl leaf will poke out all the way around. If I place the top colors a little off, they won't go over the edge of the beige and create a spot that could potentially lift up over time. The next step is to separate the colors but keep it as one file. I've had situations where they all import at different sizes in the vinyl cutting software, and keeping it as one file will prevent this and ensure that everything will line up. This is how I've laid it out in Silhouette Studio. I've made notes in blue to remind me of what size I have to cut the vinyl. I've got the grid turned on as well. It's in inches, which makes this easy. That grid lines up with the printed grid on the actual cutting mat. I've added some extra cuts here to make the weeding easier. I hate struggling with one big piece when I weed it. It tends to get stuck to stuff that it's not supposed to and ruin the decal. I've also given the lines separate colors. This software has the ability to cut by color, so each cut can have different settings. Here's the location for that option. Select your line and then pick a color for it. It's hard to see, but I've got a green box around the leaf. This will cut all the way through the vinyl, which will give the decal a nicer outer edge. I only did that to the beige leaf, because that's the important part. That's where the final decal will be built from. The backer for the teal and the orange parts will simply be discarded, so it doesn't need to be cut nicely around the edge. When you go to send the file to the cutter, there's a few options I didn't previously know about. Instead of Simple Cut, where it cuts every line with the same setting, you can choose Line Cut, which cuts each color line differently. You can see here I also have the blue color unchecked so that it won't cut that out at all. The red lines will just cut through the vinyl, but not the backer, and the green lines will cut with enough force to cut through the backer as well, all the way to the cutting mat. Here's my settings for the red line, and my settings for the green line. Your settings might be different based on your machine and how dull your blade is. The next thing to do is place the vinyl on the mat. This is pretty easy since everything is laid out with a grid in the software. which matches the grid on the mat. Then I send it to the cutter. Here's where those extra cut lines come into play. They allow me to pull the scrap off in smaller pieces rather than just one big piece. Also, having it laid out like this means that I can pick up both the teal and the orange parts with the transfer tape as just one piece, rather than each one separately. And when I lay them down on the leaf, they'll both line up. Now I put a piece of transfer tape over the whole thing and rub it down. I like to do the final alignment on a light box. I find it makes it much easier. I put a piece of parchment paper down first, leaving a bit at the top so I can stick the transfer tape down, and then I pull the parchment out and lay down the top colors. Parchment paper is better than wax for this purpose. It's coated in silicone and the vinyl doesn't stick to it at all. The last step is to clean up the edges with scissors. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to hit all the buttons on your way out, and thanks for watching.